The 1970s didn't just give us rock music, they gave us rock mythology. It was one of the most musically diverse, commercially explosive, and culturally defining decades in rock history. Blues soaked British bands exploding into stadium gods, hard rock evolving into something heavier and darker, punk blowing up the establishment from the inside out, arena rock turning concerts into spectacles, singer-songwriters making rock feel personal in ways it never had before. The 1970s didn't produce just one version of rock, it produced all of them simultaneously. Today we're counting down the top 10 rock songs that defined the 1970s. Here's how we put this list together. We used a structured scoring framework that evaluates each song across 6 weighted categories. Chart performance at 20%, which tracks commercial success via singles charts, album sales, and certifications, expanded beyond singles only to reduce bias against album tracks that never got a commercial release. Critical acclaim and canonization at 20%, covering placement on institutional greatest songs lists, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame citations, and retrospective critical consensus built across decades. Cultural impact at 20%, measuring how far a song reached beyond music itself into film, television, advertising, and broader societal moments. How deeply did it embed itself in the culture? Genre and scene influence at 20%, looking at impact on future artists, subgenres, and movements. How much the song shaped the direction of rock music itself. Longevity and airplay at 15%, assessing classic rock radio permanence, streaming era staying power, and continued presence in live performance and cultural callbacks. And nostalgia and generational identity at 5%, covering emotional resonance and how strongly the song represents the spirit of the 1970s. This category was kept deliberately low to prevent era bias from inflating songs that are beloved but not necessarily definitive. Each song was scored independently across all 6 categories. The result is a ranking built on measurable impact, not personal preference. Before we jump in, make sure you subscribe and hit the like button. It helps us keep these deep dives coming, and stick around until the end because we have 5 honorable mentions that just barely missed the top 10. Let's get into it. Number 10, Freebird, Lynyrd Skynyrd, 1973. For a significant chunk of the American South, this is not just a song, it is a religion. Ronnie Van Zant wrote Freebird as a meditation on the impossibility of being tied down, a man who loves someone but knows deep in his bones that he cannot stay. It begins quietly, almost like a lullaby, with Billy Powell's piano carrying the weight of something unspoken. Then the guitars come in, and the song transforms into one of the most extended, emotionally charged rock instrumentals ever committed to tape. That guitar outro, with Alan Collins and Gary Rossington trading licks for nearly 5 minutes, became the benchmark for rock lead guitar in the 1970s. It was not just technically impressive, it felt earned. By the time those guitars explode into full gallop, you have already lived through the entire emotional arc of the song, and the music is simply completing the story the words started. Freebird defined Southern rock as a genre not just stylistically but in terms of ethos. It said that rock could be soulful and sprawling and deeply American in a way that had nothing to do with New York or Los Angeles. It said you could be from Jacksonville, Florida, and write something immortal. The song became a concert ritual, a crowd demand, a running joke, and an anthem all at once, which tells you everything about how completely it embedded itself in the culture. Number 9, Dream On by Aerosmith, 1973. Steven Tyler was 24 years old when he wrote Dream On. He was writing about aging, he was writing about longing, he was writing about the distance between where you are and where you always imagined you would be. And somehow, at 24, he nailed it. The song builds from a minor key piano figure into one of rock's most celebrated vocal showcases. Tyler's voice climbs across multiple octaves with an operatic desperation, reaching its peak in that final series of screams that still raises the hair on the back of your neck 5 decades later. It is a performance that announces without any ambiguity that this band was not messing around. Dream On was not an immediate hit. It took years and a re-release to fully connect with mainstream audiences, but that slow burn is part of what the song scores so well on. It built its legend the honest way, through merit and persistence rather than timing and hype. By the mid-1970s, it had become a rock radio staple, and it has never left. It is one of the most streamed classic rock songs in history, and it introduced Aerosmith to a world that would spend the next 5 decades being grateful for the introduction. Number 8. Sweet Home Alabama, Lynyrd Skynyrd, 1974. Yes, Lynyrd Skynyrd appears twice on this list, and no, it is not a mistake. The one song per artist rule was applied across the full data set, but the cross-model positional consensus placed both Freebird and Sweet Home Alabama firmly inside the top 10 on multiple independent frameworks. Their collective footprint was simply too significant to compress. In a different decade, either song could have topped the list on its own. Welcome to the 1970s. Where Freebird was a meditation, Sweet Home Alabama was a declaration. It arrived as a direct response to Neil Young's critical commentary on the South in songs like Southern Man, and it came back swinging, not with apology, but with pride and a guitar riff so immediately recognizable that you can identify it from 2 notes. That opening figure, the D CAD 9 G chord progression that every aspiring guitarist learns in week 3, anchored a song that became the defining anthem of Southern identity in American rock. The groove is irresistible, the harmonies are lush, and the swagger is completely earned. The song charted in the top 10 nationally, received massive radio play, and has never stopped being requested at every classic rock station on the continent. Its cultural reach is extraordinary. It has appeared in dozens of films and television programs, been covered hundreds of times, and become synonymous with regional pride in a way that transcends genre. People who have never owned a Lynyrd Skynyrd record know Sweet Home Alabama. That is cultural impact by definition. Number 7. London Calling by The Clash. Everything about London Calling feels like the sound of a world about to change. Released in December 1979, the song is a breathless, apocalyptic warning shot fired across the bow of a decade that was ending and a world that felt increasingly unstable. Nuclear threats, race riots, unemployment, rising fascism. Joe Strummer packed all of it into 3.5 minutes, delivered with a vocal urgency that made every word feel like it was personally directed at you. Musically, the song is a revelation. The rhythm section of Paul Simonon and Topper Headon drives the track with a relentless, almost motoric energy. Mick Jones's guitar adds color without ever overwhelming the central tension. And that bass drop, the one that opens the song before everything else comes crashing in, is one of the most arresting moments in rock history. Simonon smashing that bass on the cover of the album while the song plays is one of the defining images of the era. Critically, London Calling is one of the most celebrated rock songs ever recorded. It sits near the top of virtually every institutional list, including Rolling Stone's 500 greatest songs of all time. It expanded what punk was capable of, proved that political rage could coexist with genuine musical craftsmanship, and influenced an incalculable number of artists across genres. The song did not just close out the decade, it pointed toward everything that would come next. Number 6. Baba O'Riley, The Who, 1971. The synthesizer intro to Baba O'Riley is one of the most recognizable pieces of music in rock history. That hypnotic cycling arpeggio pattern, Pete Townsend playing a synthesizer he programmed himself, feels like it arrives from somewhere both ancient and futuristic at the same time. Before a single word has been sung, you know something significant is about to happen. Townsend wrote the song as a meditation on youth, optimism, and what he called the teenage wasteland, not as a condemnation, but as a lament for the gap between youthful promise and the world that greets it. Roger Daltrey delivers those lyrics with the kind of conviction that makes philosophical questions feel visceral. And Keith Moon's drumming in the back half of the track, chaotic but perfectly controlled, captures exactly what it feels like to be young and overwhelmed and alive. The The song never charted as a single, it was never released as one in the United States, but it became one of the most played rock songs on radio and remains a live concert staple for the band 5 decades later. Its genre influence is deep and wide, from the use of synthesizers as a primary textural element in rock to the anthemic build toward catharsis, to the willingness to make something that felt both personal and universal at the same time. Every arena rock song that followed owes something to this one. Number 5. Smoke on the Water by Deep Purple, 1972. 4 notes. That is it. 4 notes on a guitar, and you already know exactly what song this is. Ritchie Blackmore's opening riff to Smoke on the Water is arguably the single most recognized guitar phrase in rock history. It is the riff that gets played in every guitar shop by every customer who has ever picked up an instrument for the first time. It is the gateway drug for an entire generation of guitarists, and it earned that status completely honestly, because the riff does exactly what great riffs are supposed to do. It sticks, it moves, it builds, and it opens a song that absolutely delivers on the promise. The track was inspired by an actual event, the burning of the Montreux Casino during a Frank Zappa concert in December 1971, which the band witnessed from across Lake Geneva while on tour. Ian Gillan's lyrics describe the scene with a documentary clarity that makes the song feel like a first-hand account rather than a piece of songwriting. The story grounds what could have been a pure riff exercise in genuine human experience. Deep Purple had already helped invent hard rock and proto-metal before Smoke on the Water, but this was the song that brought them to the world. Its influence on hard rock and heavy metal is immeasurable, not just for the riff itself, but for the template it established. A massive guitar hook, a thunderous rhythm section, soaring vocals, and lyrics that feel earned rather than manufactured. Blackmore's solo work on this track also set a standard for lead guitar in heavy rock that reverberated for decades. Number 4. Born to Run, Bruce Springsteen, 1975. There is a scene in 1,000 American movies that no one has actually filmed yet. 2 people driving at night on an empty highway, the windows down, the whole future unwritten, and something playing on the radio that sounds like everything is possible. Born to Run is the song playing in that scene. Springsteen spent 6 months writing and recording Born to Run, obsessively reworking it until it sounded the way the feeling felt. The production is dense and cinematic, saxophone, glockenspiel, thundering drums, walls of guitar piled on top of each other until it sounds less like a rock song and more like a Phil Spector production crossed with a teenage dream. Every element is maximalist because the emotion it is capturing is maximalist. The song arrived at a critical moment. CBS Records was on the verge of dropping Springsteen before the album came out. When Born to Run connected, it did not just save his contract, it put him on the cover of Time and Newsweek simultaneously in the same week, an almost unheard of cultural moment for a rock musician. The story of Wendy and the narrator racing away from the dead-end streets of their hometown became one of the great American rock narratives, connecting with an audience that recognized that feeling of desperate, hopeful flight. As a statement of artistic ambition and commercial breakthrough, Born to Run is among the most important rock songs ever recorded. It cemented the boss's legacy before he had even turned 26 years old. Number 3. Hotel California, Eagles, 1976. The Eagles built a career on the tension between the California dream and the California reality. In Hotel California, they found the perfect metaphor for it. Don Henley's voice, opening the song over Joe Walsh and Don Felder's interlocking guitar figures, creates an atmosphere of seductive dread. The narrator checks into a hotel that seems too good to be true, and of course it is. The song is about the music industry, about Hollywood, about the trap of success and excess, and it works on every level because the imagery is universal enough to apply to anything you have ever wanted so badly that wanting it consumed you. The guitar outro is one of the most celebrated instrumental passages in rock history. Felder and Walsh trade leads back and forth in a dual guitar interplay that builds in tension and complexity before resolving into something that feels both inevitable and heartbreaking. It is a masterclass in how guitar work can carry emotional narrative. Critically, Hotel California is consistently ranked among the greatest rock songs ever recorded. It reached #1 on the Billboard Hot 100, won the Grammy for Record of the Year in 1978, and has been a staple of rock radio for 5 decades without any sign of diminishing. Its cultural footprint in films, television, covers, and cultural references is staggering. It is the defining document of a specific American moment, and it still sounds like warning and seduction in equal measure every single time. Number 2, Bohemian Rhapsody, Queen, 1975. There was a meeting at EMI Records in 1975 where label executives listened to Bohemian Rhapsody and reportedly told Queen it was far too long, too operatic, and too weird to ever get radio play. The song spent 9 weeks at #1 in the UK. What Freddie Mercury created with Bohemian Rhapsody had no precedent and spawned no direct successors because nothing could realistically follow it. The song moves through 4 entirely distinct sections: a quiet piano ballad, an operatic multi-voice arrangement, a hard rock climax, and a gentle piano coda, without ever losing its internal logic or emotional coherence. It is a 6-minute song that feels like a complete narrative arc, a beginning, middle, and end, scored for rock band and imaginary orchestra. Mercury's vocal performance across the recording is one of the great technical achievements in studio rock. The layered harmonies in the operatic section were built by stacking Mercury, Brian May, and Roger Taylor's voices hundreds of times until the track sounded like a choir. May's guitar solo, placed in the song's rock section, is explosive and perfectly timed. It arrives like release after sustained tension. The song's cultural immortality was confirmed twice. Once in the 1970s when it first dominated the charts, and again in 1992 when it appeared in Wayne's World and reached a new generation of listeners who proceeded to love it just as unconditionally. Today it is one of the most streamed songs in music history across all genres. It is not just the greatest rock song of 1975, it is one of the greatest recordings ever made in any format, in any era. Number 1, Stairway to Heaven by Led Zeppelin, 1971. This was never going to be anyone else. Led Zeppelin did not release Stairway to Heaven as a single. There was no promotional campaign, no radio push, no strategic rollout. The band simply put it on the 4th track of side 1 of Led Zeppelin 4 and let it exist. Within a year, it had become the most requested song on rock radio in the United States. It has held that title on and off ever since. The song unfolds in stages, a quiet acoustic finger-picking intro that builds through folk and Celtic textures, a gradual introduction of electric instruments, and then a volcanic shift into one of the most celebrated rock builds ever recorded. Jimmy Page's guitar work throughout is extraordinary. His acoustic playing in the opening section is delicate and searching, and his electric playing in the climax is ferocious and perfectly structured. Robert Plant's vocal performance matches the song's emotional journey note for note, moving from introspective to transcendent without a single false step. John Paul Jones's arrangement is the structural spine that makes everything else possible. The mellotron flutes, the gradual building of instrumentation, the way the song accelerates as if the music itself is discovering something urgent. These are compositional decisions of the highest order. This is not a song that was assembled, it was summoned. Critically, Stairway to Heaven is one of the most analyzed and celebrated pieces of music in rock history. It appears on virtually every institutional greatest songs list ever published. It has influenced progressive rock, hard rock, folk rock, and every permutation of those genres. Its genre-influenced score across all 3 independent frameworks was the highest of any song in this study. There is a reason it landed at #1 on every single model independently before the positional consensus was even calculated. Not because it was the most commercially successful song of the decade, it was never released as a single. Not because it was the most controversial, or the most explosive, or the most radio-friendly. It landed at #1 because it is the song that most completely represents what rock music was reaching for in the 1970s. The idea that a guitar, a band, and the right 8 minutes could build a cathedral. Honorable mentions: Before we wrap up, 5 songs that scored just outside the top 10 and deserve acknowledgement. Number 11, Layla by Derek and the Dominoes, 1970. Eric Clapton's guitar and piano epic, built around his unrequited love for Pattie Boyd, is one of the most emotionally raw recordings of the decade. The piano coda section, contributed by Duane Allman and Jim Gordon, remains one of the most beautiful passages in rock history. Number 12, Comfortably Numb by Pink Floyd, 1979. The dual guitar solos from David Gilmour are widely considered among the greatest ever played. The song's exploration of disconnection and inner withdrawal landed with devastating precision at the end of a decade that had asked a lot from the people who lived through it. Number 13, Paranoid by Black Sabbath, 1970. 2 minutes and 48 seconds that helped invent an entire genre. Sabbath's influence on heavy metal cannot be overstated, and this song, written in 20 minutes as a filler track, became one of the most enduring rock songs ever recorded. Number 14, More Than a Feeling by Boston. In 1976, Tom Scholz recorded the demo in his basement. The finished track went on to sell tens of millions of copies, and it helped define arena rock's sonic template. The guitar harmony work on this song was foundational for everything that came after in melodic hard rock. Number 15, Go Your Own Way by Fleetwood Mac, 1977. Written by Lindsey Buckingham about Stevie Nicks while they were both still in the band and both going through a painful breakup, and then Nicks was asked to sing harmony on it. If that is not rock and roll drama, nothing is. The song is also purely musically one of the tightest and most emotionally charged tracks of the decade. The 1970s gave rock music its mythology. Stairway to Heaven, Bohemian Rhapsody, Hotel California, Born to Run. These are not just songs, they are landmarks. They are the moments when rock stopped being a youth trend and became a permanent part of human cultural history. What is remarkable about building a list like this through a rigorous cross-model methodology is how clearly the consensus emerges. When 3 independent frameworks, each built on different priorities and weightings, agree on the same top 5 songs without any coordination, you are not looking at opinion anymore. You are looking at something that transcended its era so completely that even the math agrees. Now we want to hear from you. Do you think Stairway to Heaven deserves the top spot? What songs from the 1970s do you think got overlooked? Drop your takes in the comments. We read every one of them. If you enjoyed this deep dive, subscribe to the channel and hit that like button. We have more of these coming, built the same way with the same rigor and the same love for the music that shaped everything that followed. We will see you in the next one.